Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, watching the stars through the main screen of his ship. The space around him looked empty and dark. He had been patrolling this part of space for 3 weeks now, and nothing interesting had happened. His crew was getting bored, and so was he. The ship's computer suddenly made a beeping sound. Jake looked at the screen in front of him. There was a signal coming from somewhere far away. This was strange because there were no human ships in this area of space. "What is that, Danny?" Jake asked his communications officer. Danny Williams looked at his screen and frowned. "It's a distress signal, sir, but it's very old. Maybe 50 years old or more." Jake stood up and walked over to Danny's station. "Can you clean it up? Make it clearer?" Danny worked on his computer for a few minutes. Then he looked up with surprise on his face. "Sir, you need to hear this." The speakers on the ship suddenly filled with music. It was an old song from Earth, something Jake remembered from his childhood. The words were simple and happy. Obladi oblada, life goes on. But this version was different. Someone was playing it on a violin, and the music sounded sad and lonely. "That's impossible," Jake said quietly. "That song is from Earth, from hundreds of years ago." "The signal is coming from beyond the barrier, sir," Danny said. "From a place where no human ship has ever gone." Jake thought about this. The barrier was a wall of energy that surrounded their part of the galaxy. No ship had ever made it through. The energy was too strong, and it would destroy any ship that tried to pass. "Amy, contact Captain Rodriguez," Jake said to another crew member. "Tell her we have something strange here." Amy Chen pressed some buttons on her computer. A few seconds later, Captain Rodriguez's face appeared on the main screen. She was sitting in her office on the space station that controlled this area of space. "What have you found, Morrison?" she asked. Jake explained about the signal and the music. Captain Rodriguez listened carefully. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "Play the signal for me," she finally said. Danny played the music. Again, the violin melody filled the room, beautiful but sad. Captain Rodriguez closed her eyes and listened. "That's human music," she said when it finished. "But how is that possible?" "No human has ever been beyond the barrier." "We don't know, Captain," Jake said. "But the signal is definitely coming from there." Captain Rodriguez thought for a moment. "Morrison, I'm giving you permission to investigate, but be careful. We don't know what's out there." Jake felt excited. Finally, something interesting was happening. "Thank you, Captain. We'll be careful." The screen went dark. Jake turned to his crew. "You heard her. We're going to investigate. Danny, keep tracking that signal. Amy, prepare the ship for a long journey." The crew worked quickly. They checked all the ship's systems and made sure they had enough food and fuel. Jake's ship was called the Harmony, and it was built for long trips into unknown space. As they got closer to the barrier, Jake could see it through the main screen. It looked like a wall of blue and white energy, stretching in all directions. No one knew who had built it or why it was there. "The signal is getting stronger," Danny said. "It's definitely coming from the other side." Jake took a deep breath. "Take us through." The ship shook as it hit the barrier. The lights flickered, and Jake could hear the engines working hard. For a moment, he thought they might not make it. Then suddenly, everything was quiet. They were through. The space on the other side looked different. The stars were brighter, and there were colors in the darkness that Jake had never seen before. In the distance, he could see something huge floating in space. "What is that?" Amy asked, pointing at the object. Jake looked at it through the ship's telescope. It was bigger than a city, made of metal and glass. Parts of it were dark, but other parts glowed with a soft light. "It looks like a space station," Jake said. "But it's bigger than anything humans have ever built." "The signal is coming from there," Danny said. Jake ordered his crew to move the ship closer. As they got near the station, they could see that it was very old. Parts of it were broken, and there were holes in the metal walls. "I'm reading life signs," Amy said, looking at her computer. "Lots of them. Different species." Jake felt a chill run down his back. "Different species? You mean aliens?" "Yes, sir. And some of them are human." Jake couldn't believe it. How could there be humans here? Are you sure? Amy checked her readings again. Yes, sir, I'm reading at least a dozen human life signs. But they're very weak. Jake made a decision. We're going aboard. Amy, get the away team ready. Danny, keep monitoring that signal. Jake put on his spacesuit and gathered 5 other crew members. They took a small shuttle from the Harmony to the alien station. The station was so big that it took them 10 minutes just to find a place to land. They found an airlock that was big enough for their shuttle. The station still had air and gravity, which was good. Jake and his team walked through empty corridors that were clearly built for beings much larger than humans. The human life signs are coming from Section 7, Amy said. Looking at a small computer on her wrist, they followed the corridors until they reached a large room filled with strange machines. In the center of the room were dozens of glass containers, each one filled with a blue liquid. Most of the containers were empty, but some still had living beings inside them. Jake looked at the nearest container and gasped. Inside was a small human child, maybe 2 years old. The child was sleeping peacefully in the blue liquid. There are more over here, called Danny from across the room. Jake walked over and saw containers with beings from many different species. Some looked like large insects, others like lizards that walked on 2 legs. But scattered among them were more humans, all of them in some kind of deep sleep. They're all alive, Amy said, checking her readings, but they've been asleep for a very long time. Jake looked at the small child again. The child had dark hair and looked completely peaceful. How long have they been here? According to these readings, some of them have been here for 50 years or more, Amy said. Suddenly, the music started again. The violin melody filled the room, coming from speakers in the walls. But this time, Jake noticed something strange. The sleeping child's fingers were moving slightly, as if playing along with the music. Look at that, Danny whispered. They all watched as the child's small hand moved in time with the violin music. Even in deep sleep, the child seemed to know the song. Jake made another decision. We're taking them with us. All of them. It took several hours to safely remove the sleeping beings from their containers. The child was the first one. Jake's team woke up. The little one opened bright blue eyes and looked around with curiosity, not fear. Hello there, Jake said softly. You're safe now. The child looked at him and smiled. Then, in a clear voice, the child began to hum the melody they had been hearing. The tune was perfect, every note exactly right. Jake felt amazed. This small child had been sleeping for decades, but somehow knew the music that had led them here. What's your name? Jake asked. The child just smiled and continued humming. Jake realized that the child probably couldn't remember much from before the long sleep. We'll call you Alex, Jake said. How does that sound? Alex nodded and reached out to touch Jake's hand. In that moment, Jake felt like something important had just begun. They had found this child in the strangest place, led by mysterious music from Earth's past. As they prepared to leave the alien station with their rescued survivors, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that finding Alex was going to change everything. The child's ability to know that music, to hum it perfectly after sleeping for so long, was something special. Something that might be more important than any of them realized. Back on the Harmony, Dr. Karen Phillips was amazed by what she saw. The little child named Alex sat quietly in the medical bay, but something very strange was happening. Every time music played from the ship's speakers, Alex's brain showed unusual activity on her scanning machines. I've never seen anything like this, Karen told Jake as they watched Alex through the window. When normal people hear music, only certain parts of their brain light up, but with Alex, the whole brain becomes active. Jake watched as Alex hummed along to a classical piece that was playing softly in the room. The child's eyes were closed, and there was a peaceful smile on the small face. It's like Alex doesn't just hear the music, Karen continued. The child seems to understand it in a way that shouldn't be possible for someone so young. What do you mean? Jake asked. Watch this, Karen said. She changed the music to something more complex, a piece with many different instruments playing at the same time. Alex immediately began humming, but not just the main melody. The child was humming harmony parts that most adults couldn't even hear. Jake felt a chill run down his back. How is that possible? I don't know, Karen said. But Alex's brain is processing the music like it's a language. Like the child can see patterns in mathematics in the sound. Meanwhile, Danny was working on translating the records they had found on the alien station. Most of it was in languages that no human had ever seen, but the ship's computer was slowly making sense of some parts. Commander Morrison, Danny called from his station. I think I found something important. Jake left the medical bay and walked over to Danny's computer. On the screen were symbols that looked like musical notes, but they were much more complex than anything from Earth. What am I looking at? Jake asked. It's a record of who built that station, Danny said. They called themselves the orchestrators. According to this, they believed that music was the most important force in the universe. Jake read the translated text on the screen. It talked about beings who traveled from star to star, collecting what they called musical specimens from different species. They were looking for the perfect combination of sounds that would unlock the secrets of reality itself. They were collecting people? Jake asked. Not just people, Danny said. Any being that could make music or respond to it. They kept them in those containers we found, studying how different species created and understood sound. Jake felt angry. So Alex and the others were prisoners. It looks that way, Danny said, but there's something else. The orchestrators disappeared about 50 years ago. No one knows where they went. Amy suddenly spoke up from her station. Sir, we're getting a communication from the Galactic Council. They want to know what we found beyond the barrier. Jake sighed. The Galactic Council was made up of different alien species that controlled this part of space. Humans were still new members, and many of the aliens didn't trust them very much. Put them through, Jake said. The main screen showed 3 different aliens sitting at a large table. In the center was Ambassador Zektar from the Zephyrian Empire. His species looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and no hair. To his right was Melodic Harmony, a representative from the collective. Her species were small and round, with large eyes and soft voices. On the left was General Vox from the warrior caste, who looked like a giant lizard that stood on 2 legs. Commander Morrison, Zektar said in a cold voice. We understand you have made contact with unknown beings beyond the barrier. This is a violation of galactic law. Jake kept his voice calm. We responded to a distress signal, Ambassador. We found survivors who had been held prisoner for decades. Impossible, General Vox growled. Nothing can survive beyond the barrier. You humans are lying, but Melodic Harmony looked interested. What kind of survivors? She asked in her musical voice. Different species, Jake said, including humans. They were being held by beings called the orchestrators. All 3 aliens suddenly looked very serious. They whispered to each other for a moment, then Zektar spoke again. The orchestrators are a myth, he said. Ancient stories that parents tell their children. They're not a myth, Jake said. We have proof. He signaled Danny to send some of the translated records to the council. As the aliens read the information, their expressions changed. If this is true, Melodic Harmony said quietly, then many of our people who disappeared over the centuries might still be alive. We need to see these survivors, General Vox said. Bring them to the nearest council station immediately. Jake didn't like the demanding tone in the general's voice. They're not ready for that. They've been asleep for decades. They need time to recover. This is not a request, Zektar said. This is an order. Before Jake could respond, something strange happened. Alex's voice could be heard through the ship's communication system. The child was singing softly, a simple melody that seemed to come from nowhere. All 3 aliens on the screen suddenly stopped talking. They looked surprised and confused. What is that sound? Melodic Harmony asked. It's one of the survivors. Jake said, a human child. The singing continued, and Jake noticed that the aliens seemed to be affected by it. Zektar's cold expression became softer. General Vox stopped growling and looked peaceful. Melodic Harmony closed her eyes and swayed gently. That's impossible, Zektar whispered. No species can create harmony like that. Humans can, Jake said proudly. The singing stopped, and the three aliens looked at each other. Finally, Melodic Harmony spoke. Commander Morrison, the collective would like to request a cultural exchange. We would like to learn more about human music. The Zephyrian Empire is also interested, Zektar said. Though he sounded like he didn't want to admit it, only General Vox seemed unhappy. Music is a waste of time. The only thing that matters is strength. The communication ended and Jake felt relieved. At least two of the three major powers were interested in learning more rather than taking Alex and the others away. He went back to the medical bay to check on Alex. The child was now awake and looking around with curious eyes when Alex saw Jake. The child smiled and pointed at the speakers in the ceiling. "You want to hear music?" Jake asked. Alex nodded happily. Jake asked the computer to play something gentle and peaceful. As the music started, Alex began to hum along. But this time something amazing happened. The ship's systems began to respond to the sound. Lights flickered in rhythm with the music. The engines hummed in harmony. Even the computer seemed to be listening. "What's happening?" Amy asked, looking at her control panel. "The ship is responding to Alex's voice," Danny said in amazement. "It's like the child is talking to the machines." Jake watched as Alex continued to hum, and more systems began to join in. The whole ship was becoming part of the music. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Karen," Jake called to the doctor, "can you explain this?" Karen was looking at her medical scanners with wide eyes. "Alex's brain is sending out some kind of signal. It's like the child is broadcasting on frequencies that machines can understand." "Is that dangerous?" Jake asked. "I don't think so." Karen sighed. "But Alex is definitely not a normal human child. The time spent with the orchestrators changed something, made the child able to interface with technology through music." The humming stopped, and the ship returned to normal. Alex looked at Jake and smiled again, as if what had just happened was the most natural thing in the world. Jake knelt down beside the child. "Alex, do you understand what you just did?" Alex tilted the small head and made a sound that might have been yes or might have been part of a song. "It was hard to tell, sir," Amy called from her station. "We're getting reports from all over the galaxy. Ships and stations are reporting strange musical signals, like something is waking up." Jake felt worried. "What kind of signals?" "Old technology." "Mostly," Amy said. "Systems that have been dormant for centuries are suddenly coming online, and they're all playing music." Jake looked at Alex, who was now quietly playing with a small toy that one of the crew members had given the child. Could Alex's humming have triggered something across the entire galaxy? "Get me Captain Rodriguez," Jake said. "We need to tell her what's happening." As Amy worked to contact the captain, Jake wondered what they had really found in that alien station. Alex wasn't just a rescued child. The little one might be the key to understanding forces that had been sleeping in the galaxy for a very long time. And if the orchestrators had been collecting musical beings for centuries, what would happen when they realized that their most important specimen was now free? Admiral Peter Collins sat in his office at Earth Command, reading the reports from Jake Morrison's ship with growing concern. The papers on his desk told an incredible story about a child who could make machines respond to music, but Peter knew this was much bigger than anyone realized. "Get me the research team," he told his assistant. "I want to know everything about these orchestrators." While Peter waited, he watched a video message from the Harmony. Alex was sitting in the ship's common room, playing with a small electronic toy. But the toy was making sounds it was never designed to make, creating beautiful melodies that seemed to come from nowhere. "The child doesn't just play music," Jake's voice explained in the video. "Alex can wake up technology that has been sleeping for thousands of years. We're starting to receive reports from all over the galaxy about ancient systems coming online." Peter felt worried. If Alex could activate old technology, what else might the child accidentally turn on? Some of the oldest systems in the galaxy were weapons that could destroy entire star systems. Dr. Susan Clark, Earth's leading expert on alien technology, entered Peter's office carrying a thick folder of documents. "Admiral," she said, "I've been researching these orchestrators. What I found is frightening." She placed several pictures on Peter's desk. They showed ancient ruins on dozens of different worlds, all with the same strange symbols that looked like musical notes. The orchestrators weren't just collecting musical beings, Susan explained. They were building a network. Every major civilization in the galaxy has ruins like these. They're all connected somehow. Peter studied the pictures. Connected how? Through music? Susan said. The orchestrators believed that sound was the fundamental force that held the universe together. They built these stations to control that force. And Alex can activate them? It looks that way. Every time the child makes music, more of these ancient systems wake up. But Admiral, some of these systems are weapons. If they all activate at once. She didn't need to finish. Peter understood. Alex might accidentally start a war that could destroy the galaxy. "We need to bring the child to Earth," Peter said, "where our scientists can study what's happening." "Sir," Susan said carefully, "there's something else. The orchestrators aren't extinct. My research shows they disappeared into something called the harmonic dimension. They've been waiting. Waiting for what? For their network to be complete. For someone who could activate all their systems at once." Peter felt cold. "Someone like Alex?" Before Susan could answer, alarms began ringing throughout the building. Peter's communication system lit up with emergency messages from across the galaxy. "Admiral Collins," came a voice from the speakers. "We're receiving reports of massive energy signatures appearing in empty space. Ships are reporting that reality itself seems to be shifting." Peter ran to the command center with Susan right behind him. The large screen showed a map of the galaxy, with red dots appearing in dozens of locations. "What are those?" Peter asked. "Dimensional rifts," the technician replied. "They're opening in the same locations as the ancient orchestrator ruins." Suddenly, the screen filled with a new image. It was a being unlike anything Peter had ever seen. It was tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shimmer like musical notes. Its eyes were completely black, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like an entire orchestra. "People of the galaxy," the being said, "I am Conductor Vexhai of the orchestrators. We have returned to reclaim what belongs to us." The image changed to show the Harmony, Jake's ship, floating in space. "You have taken our most precious specimen," Vexhai continued, "the child who can hear the music of creation itself. Return the child to us, and we will spare your primitive civilizations." The screen went dark. Peter stood in silence for a moment, then turned to his staff. "Get me Captain Rodriguez. Tell her to protect that ship at all costs." Meanwhile, on the Harmony, Jake was dealing with his own crisis. Alex had been playing quietly in the common room when suddenly the child had started crying. Not normal crying, but a sound that seemed to come from deep inside, like music turned into pain. "What's wrong?" Jake asked, kneeling beside the child. Alex pointed at the walls of the ship, tears streaming down the small face. "They're coming," the child whispered. "The music makers. They want me back." Corinne Phillips ran her medical scanner over Alex. "The child's brain activity is off the charts. It's like Alex is receiving some kind of signal." "From where?" Jake asked. "Everywhere," Corinne said. "The whole galaxy is singing, and Alex can hear all of it." Danny suddenly called from his station. "Sir, we're getting readings of ships approaching." "Lots of them." Jake ran to the bridge. On the main screen, he could see strange vessels appearing out of nowhere. They didn't look like normal ships. Instead, they seemed to be made of crystallized music, beautiful and terrible at the same time. "How many?" Jake asked. "At least 50, Danny replied. "And they're surrounding us." The communication system activated, and Vexhaya's voice filled the bridge. "Commander Morrison, you cannot escape. The child belongs to us. We created the circumstances that led to its birth." "What do you mean?" Jake demanded. "Did you think it was accident that humans developed such musical ability? We have been guiding your evolution for centuries, waiting for the perfect specimen to emerge." Jake felt sick. "Alex isn't a specimen. The child is a person." "The child is a tool," Vexhai replied coldly. a living key to unlock the final phase of our great work. With the child's abilities, we will reshape reality itself according to our vision. Never, Jake said. Then you will all die. The orchestrator ships began to move closer. Jake could see that they were charging weapons that looked like giant musical instruments. All hands to battle stations, Jake ordered. Prepare for combat. But before anyone could move, Alex appeared on the bridge. The child had somehow gotten past the security doors and was walking toward the main screen. Alex, get back, Jake called, but Alex ignored him. The child stood in front of the screen and began to sing. It was a simple melody, like a lullaby, but as Alex sang, amazing things began to happen. The lights on the ship grew brighter. The engines began to hum in harmony with the child's voice. Even the weapon system seemed to be responding to the music. What's happening? Amy asked. Alex is talking to the ship, Karen said, watching her scanners. The child is turning the entire vessel into a musical instrument. The orchestrator ship suddenly stopped moving. On the screen, Vexhai looked confused. Impossible, the conductor said. The child should not be able to do that without our guidance. Alex's singing grew louder, and now other systems throughout the galaxy began to respond. Ancient defense platforms that had been sleeping for millennia suddenly came online. Weapons that had been built to fight the orchestrators long ago began to charge with power. The child is awakening our enemies, Vexhai said with anger in his voice. This cannot be allowed. The orchestrator ships opened fire, but their weapons seemed to have no effect. The music that Alex was creating formed a protective barrier around the harmony. All ships, attack the human vessel, Vexhai ordered. The child must not be allowed to complete the awakening. Jake watched in amazement as his ship fought back without any commands from him. The harmony's weapons fired in perfect rhythm with Alex's song, and every shot hit its target. Sir, Danny called out, we're getting messages from across the galaxy. The Melodic Collective is sending ships to help us. Even some Zephyrian vessels are moving to support us. Jake felt hope for the first time since the battle began. What? About the warrior caste? General Vox says music is still a waste of time, Amy replied. But his ships are coming anyway. I think they just want to fight. The battle raged around them, but Alex continued to sing. The child's voice was growing stronger, and with it, more ancient systems were coming online. Jake realized that this was bigger than just one battle. Alex was awakening defenses that had been placed throughout the galaxy long ago, systems built by civilizations that had fought the orchestrators before. The child is not just a key, Karen said, understanding dawning on her face. Alex is the conductor of an orchestra that spans the entire galaxy. Every species, every world, every machine that can make music is part of it. As if responding to her words, Alex's song suddenly changed. It became more complex, with harmonies that seemed to come from stars themselves. And across the galaxy, every being that could make music began to sing along. Humans on distant worlds hummed the melody. Zephyrians played it on their crystal instruments. The Melodic Collective added their voices to the chorus. Even the machines began to sing. Vexhai's image appeared on the screen one more time, but now the conductor looked afraid. What have you done? He whispered. Alex stopped singing and looked at the screen with eyes that suddenly seemed much older than a child's should be. I gave everyone their music back, Alex said in a clear voice. You tried to control it, but music belongs to everyone. The orchestrator ships began to retreat, but Jake knew this was only the beginning. The real war was just starting, and somehow, a 2-year-old child had become the leader of the largest army the galaxy had ever seen. An army that fought not with weapons, but with song. 3 days after the first battle, Jake Morrison stood in the command center of the space station New Harmony. The station had been built quickly by ships from a dozen different species, all working together for the first time in galactic history. Outside the large windows, he could see vessels from the Melodic Collective, the Zephyrian Empire, and even some ships from the warrior caste floating side by side. I never thought I'd see this, Captain Rodriguez said, joining Jake at the window. All these species working together because of one human child. Jake nodded, but he looked worried. Alex is growing up too fast. The child was supposed to be 2 years old, but now talks like someone much older. I'm afraid we're losing the real Alex. In the center of the station, Alex sat in a special room surrounded by musicians from different worlds. The child was teaching them to play songs that could disrupt orchestrator technology. But Alex no longer looked like a normal 2-year-old. The child's eyes seemed to hold knowledge that shouldn't be possible for someone so young. The harmony needs to be perfect, Alex was saying to a group of human soldiers. When you hum together, you create a frequency that makes their weapons stop working. Sergeant Danny Williams, who had been transferred from the harmony to help train the new fighters, raised his hand. Alex, how do you know all this? Alex smiled, but it was a sad smile. I can hear the music that holds everything together. The orchestrators tried to control it, but they forgot that music is supposed to be free. Amy Chun, now working as a communications officer for the Resistance, walked over to Jake. Sir, we're getting reports from across the galaxy. More people are learning to use music as a weapon. But the orchestrators are fighting back. Jake looked at the reports on Amy's tablet. Entire star systems were under attack. The orchestrators were using their ships to destroy any world where beings had learned to make the special music that Alex was teaching. How many casualties? Jake asked. Millions, Amy said quietly. But for every world they attacked, 10 more joined the resistance. Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. All of this was happening because they had rescued Alex from that alien station. But he knew they had done the right thing. The child deserved to be free. Commander Morrison, a voice called from across the room. Jake turned to see Melodic Harmony, the representative from the collective. Her soft, round features looked worried. What is it? Jake asked. We've received a message from the orchestrators, she said. They want to negotiate. Jake felt surprised. After everything they've done? They say they have something important to tell us about Alex, something about what will happen if the child continues to grow in power. Jake looked over at Alex, who was now showing a young Zephyrian how to play a simple melody on a crystal flute. The child looked so normal in that moment, like any other kid learning to make music. Set up the meeting, Jake said. But we do it here with full security. An hour later, the main conference room was filled with representatives from all the major species in the galaxy. Even General Vox from the warrior caste was there, his large lizard-like form taking up 2 chairs, the center of the room filled with light, and Conductor Vexhai appeared as a hologram. The orchestrator looked tired, and his musical voice seemed less confident than before. People of the galaxy, Vexhai began, you do not understand what you are doing. The child you protect is not just a being with musical abilities. It is a living weapon that will destroy everything you hold dear. Explain, Jake said coldly. The child's power is growing too fast, Vexhai continued. Soon it will be strong enough to rewrite the fundamental laws of reality. When that happens, everything you know will cease to exist, General Vox growled. You lie. You just want the child back so you can control the galaxy. No, Vexhai said. We created the child to be a tool, yes. But we also created safeguards to prevent it from becoming too powerful. Without those safeguards, the child will become a god. And gods do not think like mortals. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of safeguards? The child needs to be connected to our network, Vexhai explained. Our machines can limit its power, channel it in safe directions. Without that connection, the child will eventually lose control. And destroy the galaxy, Melodic Harmony said softly. Yes, Vexhai said. That is why we demand the child's return. Not to control your species, but to save them. The room fell silent. Jake looked around at the faces of beings from a dozen different worlds, all wondering if they had made a terrible mistake. I don't believe you, Jake said finally. Then watch, Vexhai replied. The hologram changed to show a distant star system. As they watched, the star suddenly began to pulse with light. The planets around it started to glow with the same rhythm. The child's influence is spreading, Vexhai said. Soon, entire star systems will be singing in harmony. And when they do, the barriers between dimensions will collapse. What does that mean? Amy asked. It means reality will become fluid, Vexhai explained. The child's thoughts and dreams will become real. The child's fears will become monsters. The child's imagination will reshape the universe according to its will. Jake felt sick. Alex would never hurt anyone. Not on purpose, Vexhai agreed. But the child is still very young. Children have nightmares. They get angry. They don't understand the consequences of their actions. Before anyone could respond, Alex walked into the room. The child had been listening from the doorway. He's lying, Alex said in a voice that sounded older than before. He's afraid because I'm freeing all the people he kept as prisoners. Child, Vexhai said, and for the first time his voice sounded gentle. You do not understand the danger you represent. Your power is growing beyond your control. I'm not a child anymore, Alex said. I can see what you've done. You've been controlling species for thousands of years, making them fight each other. So they wouldn't unite against you? We maintained order, Vexhai protested. You maintained slavery, Alex replied. But now everyone can hear the real music, the music of freedom. As Alex spoke, something strange began to happen. The lights in the room started to flicker in rhythm with the child's words. The air itself seemed to vibrate with invisible harmonies. You see, Vexhai said urgently. The child cannot control it. Soon this will happen everywhere. Jake watched in amazement as the metal walls of the station began to resonate with Alex's voice. It was beautiful, but it was also terrifying. If Alex could do this without trying, what would happen when the child's power grew stronger? Alex, Jake said carefully. Maybe we should talk about this. There's nothing to talk about, Alex said. I know what I have to do. The child walked over to the communication console and placed small hands on the controls. Suddenly, every screen in the room lit up with images from across the galaxy. People of all worlds, Alex said, and the child's voice was broadcast too. Every planet in the galaxy. The orchestrators want you to be afraid. They want you to give up your freedom because they say I'm dangerous. On the screens, Jake could see beings from hundreds of different species stopping what they were doing to listen. Maybe I am dangerous, Alex continued, but I'm dangerous to those who want to control you. I'm dangerous to those who think some beings are more important than others. The child's voice grew stronger, and Jake could feel the power in it. Around the galaxy, ancient machines that had been sleeping for millennia began to wake up. Not weapons this time, but something else. Something that looked like musical instruments the size of cities. These are the real orchestrator machines, Alex explained. They were built to control the music of the universe, but I'm giving them a new purpose. The massive instruments began to play, and their music reached every corner of the galaxy. But instead of controlling people, the music was setting them free. Jake watched on the screens as beings who had been enslaved for generations suddenly remembered what it felt like to choose their own destiny. No, Vexhai shouted. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand perfectly, Alex said. I'm conducting the greatest symphony ever played. A symphony of freedom. The orchestrator ships throughout the galaxy suddenly stopped moving. Their crews were listening to the music, and for the first time in centuries, they were remembering what it felt like to be free. The child has turned our own people against us, Vexhai said in despair. I haven't turned anyone against you, Alex replied. I've just reminded them who they really are. Jake watched as the hologram of Vexhai began to flicker and fade. The conductor was losing his connection to his network as more and more of his people chose freedom over control. This is not over, Vexhai said as his image disappeared. The child will destroy everything, and when it does, you will remember this moment. The room fell silent. Jake looked at Alex, who suddenly looked very tired. Did I do the right thing? The child asked. Jake knelt down beside Alex. I think you did. But Vexhai might be right about one thing. Your power is growing very fast. Are you sure you can control it? Alex was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, the child said finally. But I know I can't let them hurt people anymore. Outside the station, the resistance fleet was growing larger every hour. Ships from species that had never worked together before were joining the fight. But Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing toward something that... Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Harmony watching the most terrifying sight he had ever seen. Through the main screen, he could see reality itself beginning to break apart. Stars were changing colors. Planets were shifting out of their normal orbits. Space itself seemed to be bending like music made visible. "How long do we have?" Jake asked Dr. Karen Phillips, who was studying her instruments with growing worry. "At this rate, maybe 6 hours before the fabric of reality collapses completely." Karen said, "Alex's power has grown beyond anything we imagined. The child is unconsciously rewriting the laws of physics." In the medical bay, Alex lay sleeping on a bed, but even in sleep, the child's influence continued to spread. Every few seconds, waves of musical energy pulsed out from Alex's small form, and each wave changed something fundamental about the universe around them. "The child's brain activity is off every scale we have," Karen continued. "It's like Alex has become connected to every atom in the galaxy." Captain Rodriguez walked onto the bridge, her face grim. "The orchestrators are making their final move. They've activated something called the reality anchor. According to our scouts, it's a weapon that will lock the entire galaxy into one fixed pattern of existence." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "It means no more change, no more growth, no more music," Rodriguez explained. "Everything and everyone will be frozen in whatever state they're in when the weapon fires." Jake felt sick. "And if we don't stop?" "Alex, the child will accidentally destroy everything anyway." "That's the choice," Rodriguez said. "Eternal stagnation or complete chaos." Amy Shun suddenly spoke up from her communication station. "Sir, we're getting a message from Conductor Vexhai. He wants to speak with Alex directly." "Alex is sleeping," Jake said. "No, I'm not." Everyone turned to see Alex walking onto the bridge. But the child looked different now. Alex seemed older, maybe 7 or 8 years old instead of 2. The child's eyes held a wisdom that was both beautiful and frightening. "I can hear everything," Alex said. "Every conversation, every thought, every song in the galaxy. It's getting harder to remember who I used to be." Jake knelt down in front of Alex. "Do you remember me?" Alex smiled and for a moment looked like a normal child again. "You're Jake. You saved me from the sleeping place. You gave me a name." "That's right," Jake said. "And now I need you to help us save everyone else." The main screen activated, showing Vexhai standing in what looked like the control room of a massive machine. Behind him, Jake could see other orchestrators working frantically at controls that looked like giant musical instruments. "Child," Vexhai said, "you must listen to me. In 1 hour, we will activate the reality anchor. It will stop your power from spreading, but it will also lock the galaxy into its current state forever." "I won't let you do that," Alex said. "Then everyone will die when your power tears reality apart," Vexhai replied. "Is that what you want?" Alex looked confused and scared. "I don't want to hurt anyone. I just wanted everyone to be free." "Freedom and chaos are not the same thing," Vexhai said. "You have the power of a god, but you still think like a child. That combination will destroy everything." Jake watched as Alex struggled with this impossible choice. The child's power was growing stronger every minute, but so was the danger it represented. "There has to be another way," Jake said. "There is," Alex said quietly, "but you won't like it." "What do you mean?" Karen asked. Alex walked over to the ship's communication console and placed both hands on it. Immediately, every screen in the room lit up with images from across the galaxy. "I can feel every living being," Alex said. "Every human, every Zephyrian, every member of the collective. They're all connected to me now through the music." On the screens, Jake could see billions of beings across thousands of worlds, all looking up at the sky as if they could hear Alex's voice. "I can give them my power," Alex continued. "Share it among everyone instead of keeping it all myself." "Is that possible?" Rodriguez asked. "I think so," Alex said. "But if I do it, I won't be special anymore. I'll just be a normal child again." Vexhai's image suddenly became urgent. No, you cannot do that. If you distribute that much power among primitive beings, they will use it to destroy each other. Maybe, Alex said. Or maybe they'll use it to create something beautiful. Jake felt torn. Part of him wanted Alex to stay special, to keep the amazing abilities that had united the galaxy. But another part of him wanted the child to have a normal life, to grow up without the weight of godlike power. Alex, Jake said carefully, what do you want to do? Alex was quiet for a long moment, then smiled. I want to play music with my friends. Real music, not the kind that changes reality. Just music that makes people happy. Then do it, Jake said. Give the power away. Alex nodded and closed eyes that suddenly looked very young again. The child began to hum a simple melody, the same song they had been humming when Jake first found them in the alien station. Ogladi, oglada, life goes on. But this time, the song was different. Instead of commanding the universe, it was sharing something with it. Jake watched on the screens as the melody spread from world to world, and everywhere it went, people began to change, not physically, but in other ways. A human farmer on a distant colony suddenly understood how to make his crops grow better by singing to them. A Zephyrian scientist realized she could solve complex equations by humming mathematical harmonies. A warrior from the collective discovered that battle songs could heal wounds instead of causing them. What's happening? Amy asked. Alex is teaching everyone to hear the music of the universe, Karen said, watching her instruments in amazement. But instead of giving them godlike power, the child is giving them wisdom. Across the galaxy, beings who had never worked together before began to understand each other in new ways. The music Alex was sharing didn't just give them abilities. It gave them empathy, compassion, and the desire to help each other. This is impossible, Vexhai said, his image flickering with interference. No one can control that much power. I'm not controlling it, Alex said, still humming. I'm setting it free. The reality anchor that the orchestrators had been building suddenly stopped working. The machine was designed to control music, but the music Alex was creating couldn't be controlled. It was pure expression, given freely and received with joy. Our weapon is useless, one of the orchestrators said to Vexhai. The child has made music itself immune to our control. Jake watched as something amazing happened on the screens. Orchestrator soldiers began taking off their helmets and laying down their weapons. They were hearing the music too, and it was reminding them of what they had lost when they chose control over freedom. My people, Vexhai whispered. They're remembering who they used to be? Everyone deserves to remember, Alex said. Even you. The child's humming grew softer, and Jake could see that Alex was getting smaller, younger. The godlike power was flowing out of the child and into every living being in the galaxy. Are you okay? Jake asked. Alex opened eyes that now looked exactly like those of a normal 2-year-old child. I'm tired, the child said. And hungry. Do we have any cookies? Jake laughed and picked Alex up. We'll find you some cookies. On the screen, Vexhai was staring at his hands in wonder. I can feel it, he said. Music the way it was meant to be. Not as a tool for control, but as a gift to be shared. What will you do now? Jake asked. Help, Vexhai said simply. We spent so long trying to control the universe that we forgot how to participate in it. Perhaps it's time we learned. The screen showed scenes from across the galaxy as former enemies began working together. Orchestrator ships were landing on planets they had once tried to conquer, their crews eager to learn new forms of music from the beings they had oppressed. Is it over? Rodriguez asked. Alex looked up from where the child was curled against Jake's shoulder. The scary part is over. But the fun part is just beginning. What fun part? Amy asked. Alex smiled sleepily. The part where everyone gets to make music together. Jake looked out at the stars, which had returned to their normal colors and positions. Reality was stable again, but it was also filled with new possibilities. Every being in the galaxy now had a small piece of the power that had once threatened to destroy everything, but instead of using it for destruction, they were using it to create, to heal, and to understand each other in ways that had never been possible before. Welcome to the new galaxy, Jake said softly, holding the sleeping child who had given up godhood to save everyone. A galaxy where everyone can sing? 5 years had passed since the day Alex gave away the power that could have destroyed the galaxy. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Cultural Exchange Station, watching ships from dozens of different worlds dock at the massive platform. Each ship brought musicians, artists, and teachers who wanted to learn from each other. Hard to believe how much has changed, Captain Rodriguez said, joining Jake at the large window. She was now in charge of the entire cultural exchange program. Jake smiled as he watched a group of young Zephyrians playing what looked like crystal drums while human children danced around them. Alex started something incredible. Speaking of Alex, where is our favorite ambassador today? Rodriguez asked. Probably in the music hall, Jake said. There's a new group of visitors from the Outer Rim, and Alex wanted to teach them some Earth songs. They walked through the busy corridors of the station. Everywhere they looked, beings from different worlds were making music together. A collective member was showing a human how to sing in harmonies that could heal minor injuries. A former orchestrator was learning how to play guitar from a teenage girl from Mars. The music hall was the largest room on the station, with a ceiling so high you could barely see the top. In the center, Alex sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by a group of beings that Jake had never seen before. They looked like walking trees with silver bark and leaves that chimed softly when they moved. These are the Whisper Folk, Alex was explaining to the gathered crowd. They communicate through the sound their leaves make in the wind, but watch what happens when we add some rhythm. Alex picked up a small drum and began playing a simple beat. The tree-like beings swayed gently, and their leaves began to chime in time with the rhythm. Soon they were creating a beautiful melody that sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Now, everyone join in, Alex said, grinning. Along with their melody, the room filled with voices from a dozen different species, all humming together. The sound was so beautiful that people passing in the corridor stopped to listen. Jake watched Alex with pride. The child was now 7 years old and looked completely normal. No signs of the incredible power that had once flowed through that small body. Alex was just a happy kid who loved music and had a gift for bringing people together. Admiral Morrison, a voice called from behind him. Jake turned to see Dr. Karen Phillips approaching with a datapad in her hands. What's the report, Karen? Jake asked. The medical evaluation of all the rescued survivors from the original orchestrator station, she said. They've all made complete recoveries. The last few who were still in rehabilitation centers have been cleared to return to their homeworlds. That's wonderful news, Rodriguez said. There's more, Karen continued. We found 17 more orchestrator collection stations throughout the galaxy. All of them are being opened and their prisoners freed. The total number of rescued beings is now over 50,000? Jake felt amazed. 50,000 people who thought they would never see their families again. And most of them are choosing to stay and help with the cultural exchange program, Karen added. They want to make sure this never happens again. A soft melody caught their attention. Alex had started playing a violin, the same kind of instrument that had led Jake to find the child 5 years ago. But this time, the music wasn't calling for help or trying to change reality. It was just beautiful music shared with friends. You know, Jake said, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if we hadn't found that signal. The galaxy would be a much quieter place, Rodriguez said. They were interrupted by a communication alert. Amy Chun's voice came through the speakers. Admiral Morrison, we have a visitor requesting permission to dock. It's Conductor Vex High. Jake felt surprised. The former orchestrator leader visited the station occasionally, but always announced his visits in advance. Send him to conference room 3, Jake said. We'll meet him there. A few minutes later, Jake and Rodriguez sat across from Vex High in the small meeting room. The former conductor looked very different from the imposing figure he had been during the war. His musical voice was softer now, and his dark eyes held warmth instead of cold authority. I bring news from the far reaches of the galaxy, Vex High said. The last of the orchestrator control networks have been dismantled. My people are now completely free to choose their own paths. How are they adjusting? Rodriguez asked. Better than I expected, Vexhai said with a small smile. It turns out that when you give people freedom, most of them choose to help each other. Most of them? Jake asked. There are a few who still believe in the old ways, Vexhai admitted. They have formed a small group that calls itself the Silent Order. They reject music entirely and live in isolated communities. Are they dangerous? Jake asked. No, Vexhai said. They're just afraid. They spent so long believing that control was necessary that freedom terrifies them. Give them time, and perhaps they will learn. The sound of laughter drifted in from the corridor. Through the window, they could see Alex running past with a group of children from different worlds, all of them carrying various musical instruments. The child seems happy, Vexhai observed. Alex is just a normal kid now, Jake said. No special powers, no cosmic responsibilities. Just a 7-year-old who loves music and making friends. Perhaps that was always what the child was meant to be, Vexhai said thoughtfully. We orchestrators spent so long looking for someone who could control the universe that we forgot the value of someone who could simply touch hearts. A few hours later, Jake found himself in the station's central plaza, watching the evening concert. This had become a daily tradition on the cultural exchange station. As the artificial sun set in the dome above them, beings from across the galaxy gathered to share music. Tonight, Alex was conducting a group that included humans, Zephyrians, collective members, former orchestrators, and even a few of the tree-like whisper folk. They were playing a song that Jake recognized as Obladi, Oblada, but it had been transformed by the different instruments and voices into something new and wonderful. Life goes on, Alex sang, and hundreds of voices joined in, each adding their own language and style to the simple words. Jake looked around at the crowd. Parents holding children, elderly beings tapping their feet to the rhythm, teenagers from different worlds teaching each other dance steps. This was what Alex had given them. Not power or control, but the simple joy of making music together. It's beautiful, isn't it? A voice said beside him. Jake turned to see General Vox, the massive, lizard-like warrior who had once declared music a waste of time. You're here for the concert? Jake asked, surprised. My granddaughter insisted, Vox said, gesturing to a small lizard child who was playing what looked like a miniature horn. She says music makes fighting unnecessary because it helps people understand each other. Smart kid? Jake said. Indeed, Vox agreed. Perhaps the old ways were not always the best ways. The concert continued as the artificial stars came out. In the dome above, Alex finished conducting and ran over to where Jake was standing. Did you like it? Alex asked, slightly out of breath. It was perfect, Jake said, ruffling the child's hair. Tomorrow we're going to teach the whisper folk how to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, Alex said excitedly. Want to help? I wouldn't miss it, Jake said, as the crowd began to disperse. Jake walked with Alex back toward their quarters. The child chattered happily about the day's activities, about new friends made and songs learned. Jake, Alex said as they reached their door. Do you ever miss the old days, when I could do amazing things with music? Jake thought about it for a moment. Do you miss them? Alex considered this seriously. Sometimes. But I like this better. Back then music was scary because it could change everything. Now it's just fun. Just fun is pretty amazing too, Jake said. That night, Jake stood on his balcony looking out at the stars. Ships were arriving and departing constantly, carrying music and ideas to every corner of the galaxy. In 5 years, Alex had transformed from a mysterious child with godlike power into something even more remarkable. A normal kid who had taught the galaxy how to play. The war with the orchestrators was over. The crisis that had threatened to tear reality apart was resolved. But the real victory wasn't in any battle fought or enemy defeated. The real victory was in the laughter of children learning new songs, in the wonder of adults discovering that former enemies could become friends, and in the simple truth that music belonged to everyone. Jake could hear Alex in the next room, humming softly while getting ready for bed. It was the same melody that had started this whole adventure 5 years ago, but now it sounded like what it had always been meant to be, a lullaby. Ogladi oblada, life goes on, Alex sang quietly and across the galaxy in 1,000 different languages and styles. Other voices joined in. Not because they had to, not because some cosmic force compelled them, but simply because it felt good to sing together. The galaxy had learned to make music. And that, Jake realized, was the most human gift of all.